Hello, everyone. This is Mark Nacito for the Mark Nacito podcast. I am pleased to introduce today's guest. Was a lead singer for the British invasion band Kaleidoscope, who, in my opinion, is one of the important bands of the British invasion. Their 1967 album, Tangerine Dream, was a psychedelic classic and was compared to Pink Floyd's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Sorry, I'm out of breath here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peter Daltrey.
Hi, nice to speak to you, Mark.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. First thing I want to ask is, when did your love of music first come about?
Well, I was born a long time ago, so the first sort of music that I became aware of was the very early pop music, and my absolute hero was, and probably still is, Buddy Holly.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
My brother was slightly older than me, so he was into jazz originally, and he was a beatnik into jazz, and then obviously he liked Elvis Presley. I didn't mind Elvis, but he didn't particularly do it to me. But Buddy Holly certainly did. I mean, I love the songs. I listen. I don't listen to a lot of music now, but if I listen to a Buddy Holly song, to me it sounds as fresh today as probably the day that he recorded it. I mean, it still sounds very current to me. I would say really that Buddy Holly and the Crickets were the first real pop group. I think Buddy Holly invented pop music, to be honest.
I agree.
They're such wonderful songs. And then, I love Del Shannon. He made some great records. And then, of course, just slightly after that, 62, 63, the Beatles suddenly started and everything changed. I mean, myself and the whole band, we were Beatle nuts. I mean, the Beatles were the only group for us. Although, having said that, in our very early incarnation as the Sidekicks, when we were playing live, we never played a Beatles song, I don't think, because they were probably a bit too complex for us when we were first starting out. So we did enjoy the Stones music as well, and blues. We used to do Muddy Waters and Mose Allison songs on stage, Chuck Berry, but we also used to do Rolling Stones songs as well, because some of those were quite easy to play. So yeah, it started way back in end of 50s, beginning of the 60s with the Buddy Holly, and then over here we had people like Cliff Richard and Billy Fury. I love Gene Vincent. So yeah, that's where it all began for me.
That's cool. Yeah, I agree. Buddy Holly is definitely, to me, the Crickets were the first rock group, in my opinion, on a personal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
definitely. Yes, definitely. How did how did the band form, the Sidekicks, originally? How did they how did you get together, pretty much?
Well, the other three were together before me. I mean, Dan, Steve, and Ed, I think, had all known each other as children. And then I was working at a company in London, ABC Television, and another chap came to work there, Ed. And we got on so well. We had some laughs, good times. And then suddenly one day in early '64, he said to me, "Would you like to join our band?" Well, I mean, I know I didn't have any idea that he even had a band. He hadn't mentioned it before that. And then suddenly he was asking me if I wanted to join the band. So, yeah, I was interested. I mean, I was incredibly shy at the time, but I had this fascination with singers, and I suppose like every young kid would listen to the music and then pretend that I was singing along. So yeah, I said, yeah, well, I'll come along and have a listen. I was terribly nervous because I thought, well, they're musicians, they're going to be really sort of crazy guys, and I won't know how I'll fit in. But they used to rehearse at a school hall in Acton, West London. And I went along there on my scooter, and of course it turned out that they were lovely people. I mean, Dan and Steve were just such nice guys. They welcomed me along, and then I think we started off that first night by playing a few blues songs,
Sure.
which were easy enough to sing and easy enough to me to sort of join in with. And I think they pretty much said, yeah, well, if you want to join as a singer, you can. I mean, I couldn't play an instrument, so it just turned out that I was the singer. And it wasn't long, really, before we started doing gigs. We were a very ambitious band, even from, you know, the very first day. We were all very ambitious and wanted to do well. So, yeah, the first thing we did was get some gigs, only you know, meager sort of gigs in youth clubs and church halls, things like that. But at least it was a start.
Definitely, that's really cool. I guess what was the whole club and music and even the fashion scene like in London in 1967?
Well, yeah, it was 67. Look, in 1967, I was 21, and by then we'd had our recording contract. We secured a recording contract, and we were living in London. It was the greatest place to be. I mean, London really was the centre of everything at the time. You had, you know, the rise of the bands. You had fantastic photographers, David Bailey, people like that. Amazing new actors, Terence Stamp, Julie Christie, great painters like David Hockney. Everything seemed to be happening all at once. Mary Quant with all the fashion. It was just exploding. It was an absolutely incredible time to be young and living in London. I mean, Ed and I worked, you know, just off of Regent Street, literally a stone's throw from Carnaby Street, and all the boutiques that suddenly erupted there. And yeah, I got very much into it. I must admit, I was always a bit of a dandy anyway. I had a scooter, I was a mod, and I love clothes. So yeah, I really did get into the fashion scene. And of course, the music was just everywhere. Every single day there was new music coming along. And any slightest whisper that there was going to be a new Beatle track, I mean, the whole place was just absolutely buzzing and waiting for it. So yeah, it was great. I mean, you could literally walk down the street and see these, you know, pop stars or designers walking by. If you were there every day, you would see them. I once saw a limousine come by and the Stones were in the back. You know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like Nick.
The building the building we worked in was a television centre for ABC Television. But in one of the upper floors was the offices of Vogue magazine, London Vogue. And one day I was coming out of the elevator and getting in. As the doors opened, I walked out. The Rolling Stones all walked in because they were going upstairs for an interview. So yeah, it was an amazing time.
That's cool. That's great. That's really cool. Tangerine Dream is a wonderful album. There is not one song from that album I do not like. All those songs are absolutely amazing. The 3 tracks for me that stand out, they are Further Reflections in a Room of Percussion, Dear Nellie Goodrich, and The Sky Children. One by one, what were they about? Second.
Well, that's quite interesting. I mean, Further Reflections in the Room of Percussion. And I always tell this story on stage when I'm playing because people do like the story behind that. Mm-hmm. When we decided to go on gigs and we were ambitious, we wanted recording contract. That's what we were aiming at. And we realized very quickly that you couldn't do that without your own songs, because the Beatles had set the bar very, very high. Any band really who was worth their salt had to write their own songs. So that task almost naturally fell to Ed and I. I mean, Ed was the main guitarist in the band. Being the singer, it fell to me to write the lyrics. So we used to write songs together, and I would write the words, I'd give them to Ed, and then, you know, a couple of weeks or a month down the line, Ed would say, well, I've got some of those songs, I've got the new songs together. Do you want to come round and listen to them? So I would go over to Acton where he lived, and Eddie lived in a 3-story house, and his bedroom was right at the top of the house. And we used to be very nervous about playing each other's songs, and we always had a little ritual where I would turn up about 6 or 7 in the evening, something like that, and then we'd go out for a meal together, perhaps a Chinese down the road, and we'd buy a bottle of wine on the way back. And then we'd go up to his bedroom, and we'd have a few drinks, and then he'd start playing me the songs, but he was always very nervous about it, as I say, but invariably I liked them anyway. I mean, it was a fascinating process to be writing songs. And this room I dubbed the room of percussion, because it's where we wrote all the songs together. And we would sit there for an hour or two. By then we'd finished the bottle of wine. One night I was so incredibly drunk, I actually fell off the bed.
Oh, wow.
And got my head stuck between the bed leg and the wall. And when I came to and opened my eyes, under the bed were loads of spiders. So that's where the line comes from in the song, there are spiders everywhere. So the room of percussion, Further Reflections, is literally about the room in which Ed and I used to write songs. What were the other ones you mentioned? Nellie Goodrich.
Yeah, and the Sky Children.
Yeah, well, Nellie Goodrich. When you're writing songs, when you're writing lyrics, you do need some inspirations from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And at that particular time when I wrote that, I wasn't working at the time. I mean, the band had started, we were professional by then. But I mean, we didn't have a lot of gigs straight away. For the first year that we were together and had our contract, we spent a lot of time in the studio. And most of those sessions were sort of much later in the day. So of a morning, I'd be sat at my parents' house where I lived in Rayners Lane, not far from Harrow, and I'd be sat there having my coffee in the morning, looking out the window, and this girl would walk by on her way to school, and I didn't think much about it. But then the next day, I was sat with my coffee, and she went by again. And it inspired me to write the song Dear Nellie Goodrich. If you listen to the words, it is, I'm watching you from afar, I'm writing you a letter, I'm falling in love with you, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So that is the story behind Nellie Goodrich. Now with the Sky Children, that is obviously simply a fairy tale, but that was written on a beach in Dorset in the summer of 1966. The band had gone on holiday together down to Swanage in Dorset, a beautiful area of Britain. And each morning when we got up, we used to walk out to a castle which was on top of the cliff. And we'd climb down to the beach, and it was about a couple of miles back along the beach. And it was a good summer, I think, that year. It was a beautiful day. It was early in the morning, about 8 or 9 or something. We used to do this walk every morning, and this particular morning was so beautiful. And I was just walking along with the guys, like you do when you're a songwriter. You sometimes get a line or a few words together in your head, and they actually inspire you to carry on. Mm-hmm. The problem was, as I was walking along the beach and the words started to come to me, there were so many of them forming these lines and verses. And I was trying to remember them because I didn't have a pen or paper with me. And Dan turned around and said to me, "What's the matter with you? You're quiet." And I said, "I've got this bloody song going through my head." I said, I'm trying to remember it. He said, "All right, I'll shut up, So anyway, we walked all the way back to the campsite where we were. And I grabbed a bit of paper and pen and quickly, as fast as I could, scribbled all these words down onto this torn bit of paper. And yeah, it was that was the Sky Children, which is about, something like 11 or 12 verses long. Mm-hmm. And so the whole song was written on the beach that morning.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. That album is so amazing. I mean, I play it all the time. And I love it. I think what inspired me to come and ask you for an interview, because I really want to talk about that album. It's really
I'm glad you do. It's nice for you to say that. And I know everybody. I know the Sky Children in particular is a song which I'm glad we wrote, because everybody seems to love it.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, it's a funny little album. I mean, the problem with it was that we got our recording contract in January of '67, and then we spent, several months recording the album. But because Ed and I were writing so many songs at the time, we'd ring our producer Dick Leahy and say, "Oh, can we come up and see you? We've got another song." And he'd say, "Oh yeah, quick, come up, I want to hear it." And the album was scheduled for a summer release, but we went up to Dick and we played him Flight from a Shear, and he was absolutely so knocked out with it. He got on the phone and booked the studio for that day straight away, because the original plan was that the A-side for our first release would be Holiday Maker, because that was the song that first attracted the record company and the music publisher to the band, and it was a commercial little song. But once Dick heard Flight from a Shear, he didn't want Holiday Maker on the A-side. He wanted Flight from a Shear on the A-side and Holiday Maker to be put on the B-side. But of course, this delayed the release of the album, which, obviously, the best policy, if you're going to kick off a new band, you want a hit single first and then followed by a good album. So we had the album in the can, but we didn't have the single ready. So with the delay on getting the new single together and putting that out, waiting for it to be a hit, which sadly it wasn't, it delayed the album to a November release. Well, of course, the music scene in 1967 was all centered around the summer period, the famous Summer of Love. And we missed that by several months, which really damaged the album, because Psychedelia was very short-lived. It's like a firework. It goes up, makes a fantastic scene, and then dies. And that's what happened with Psychedelia. It didn't last particularly long. I think it was about 18 months at the most. And the album would have done much better, I think, if released in June or July. But as it was, when it came to November and we were heading into a British winter, it didn't quite have the same attraction. The other problem we had was that the record company we were signed to had a really terrible distribution department. So although the record company were very keen on us, we did hear somebody say that they thought they'd found the new Beatles. Unfortunately, their distribution department didn't seem to get on board with that. So the records were hardly ever in the shops. So that's one reason why they're now worth so much money, because there are so few copies out there.
Yeah, I was lucky to find my copy. Well, I got it on CD actually, not on vinyl, but how I came across it, it was interesting because I was looking through a website of psychedelic albums, and they were categorized by American artists and British artists. And I came across Tangerine Dream, and I thought, wow, this sounds like a great album. And I think I went on YouTube and I found a couple songs on there, and I was like, man, I want this album. And I couldn't find it anywhere. I looked everywhere I went. Anytime I went to a record store, I couldn't find it. And one day I walked into a record shop, looked around, and there it was. I'm like, I'm gonna grab it before someone else grabs this. Is mine. But it's a wonderful album, truly. It's a classic, and it should be up there as one. It's up there as one of the best, in my opinion, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. One of the albums he released was a concept album called White Faced Lady, recorded in 1971, released in 1991. What was the conceptual theme of the album?
Well, like I say, Ed and I used to write so many songs that at that particular period, I mean, we'd already changed that name to Fairfield Parlour because we'd given Kaleidoscope a good run for its money, and we came very, very close to success, but not quite close enough. And then we linked up with a manager who said, well, if you're going to carry on, then perhaps it might be a good idea to have a different name and start fresh, which we agreed with at the time, although in retrospect, that might have been wrong. But anyway, we changed the name to Fairfield Parlour when we released From Home to Home, Border Rose, Just Another Day, and we were getting ready for our next album. We'd had a concert performance at the Royal Albert Hall with Pentangle. We've done the Isle of Wight Festival. We opened the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970. And then Ed and I were playing our songs, the new songs together. And I noticed an ephemeral sort of link between the songs. There was something there that to me suggested a story. So I said to Ed, would it be possible, do you think, to link all these songs up and make a story of them and, you know, create an album around a central theme, a central story? And he loved the idea, and the manager loved the idea. And he went to the record company, which by now we'd signed to Vertigo. And they said, yeah, great idea. Yeah, go away and record it, and then we'll put it out. The guy in charge at the time was Olaf Wiper. He said, no, go and record it. Sounds like a great idea. So we linked all these songs together lyrically, and I wrote a book to go with it, which now formed the sleeve notes for the album. And then we went to the studio and recorded the album. And we went back to Vertigo, to Olaf Wiper, and said, right, the album's finished, you can have it now. And he said, well, I can't do it. And we said, well, what do you mean you can't do it? He said, I'm moving to RCA, I'm leaving Vertigo, I'm going to go to RCA. So we said, well, what the hell are we supposed to do? So he said, well, I'll tell you what, just sit on it for a few months and then come and see me at RCA and we'll put it out on their label. And we said, oh, thank God for that. You know, that's a good idea. So we kept quiet for a few weeks or a couple of months to let him settle into RCA. And then we went to see him there. And we said, okay, we got the album, we're all ready to go. And he said, I can't do it. We said, you're kidding. You know, you said you're going to do it. He said, no, RCA won't let me do any project that I was associated with at Vertigo. So we were in limbo. We were completely stuck. We did punt it around, I think, to a couple of labels, but we couldn't find any takers. So sadly, the album got shelved, and because we'd now lost our recording contract, the band broke up. That was, yes, late 71, 72.
Interesting. Regarding your solo career, you embarked on a solo career in 1995. One particular album that stands out was 1996's When We Were Indians. What was the inspiration behind that album? Because I saw it referenced, and it was one that kind of was in my head, actually. So
yeah, well, once the White-Faced Lady was released eventually, there was a lot of talk about the band getting together and going back in the studio, which was a great idea, and it really fired me up. I was excited about it. But unfortunately, we were all busy doing other things, and I couldn't, try as I may, I just couldn't get the band on board. So I had to find a way of releasing all this creativity that I built up over the intervening period. And I decided to carry on writing and recording myself. I had to learn all the new digital programs to put the music together. And it was quite a task. And of course, I'd only ever written the lyrics. I'd never written melodies before. So it was quite an uphill struggle. But I found eventually, once I got myself together, that I could write songs on my own. And I started to put together albums. I think the first one was Dream On, then there was English Roses, and then the next one was When We Were Indians, which was released in Japan along with English Roses. And it's funny you should mention that, because When We Were Indians is one of my, if I could say I've got favourite tracks of my own, it doesn't sound too pompous, but When We Were Indians I do particularly like. And I suppose lyrically it's hinting at our own career.
I read somewhere that you write poetry. I mean, just by your lyrics, when I hear them on the Kaleidoscope albums, I can hear the poetic inspiration behind, the lyrics. Outside of music, have you had any poetry published? Yeah.
I haven't had any, well, only in little magazines. The poetry world. I mean, music is hard enough to get into. Publishing is even worse, I think.
Yeah.
And poetry, very difficult because there's such a limited market for poetry. The people who love it really love it, but they're few and far between. And try as I may, I've written a lot of manuscripts, a lot of books that have been rejected. Getting into publishing, you first got to find an agent, which is almost impossible. Once you've got an agent, the agent has then got to find you a publisher, which is equally as difficult. So you've got a real uphill battle. I've written a lot of poetry and other books as well. I mean, I've now started publishing them myself because in the current situation you can do that and bypass the publisher if they aren't going to have you do it yourself, which suits me down to the ground. So I think I've got 8 or 9 books available at the moment, and I'm working on one of poetry at the moment, funnily enough, as you asked that. But it's coming together. It is coming together, and I will publish it myself because there's no point in me, banging on the doors of publisher trying to get it published. I'll just do it myself, and if anyone's interested, then they can buy it. But there's 8 or 9 books out there at the moment.
That's really cool. I also read that you're into photography.
Because I've released 19 albums. Some of them I've collaborated with other people, which I really enjoy. I mean, one guy in particular that I've worked very closely with, and I think we produce some of our best music, is Damien Youth. If you haven't heard of him, please look up Damien because he's a wonderful musician, and I just love the songs we've written together. I think we've written one, two. Oh God, I can't remember. My memory is lousy. I think we've written 3 albums together, and he helped me on the 4th one as well. But there's one album in particular, Tattoo, which if I'm allowed to say it, that's my kind of music. I love singing, and I love the sound of simple productions. I love all the noise. I love all the rock stuff as well. But I do love, as a lyricist, it's nice to hear the lyrics coming through. So working with someone's acoustic guitar or a piano really allows for the voice and the lyrics to come through, which I really like. But Damien is a fabulous guitar player, and is a lovely bass for me to work with. And then I've worked with other people, Arden Lucassen in Holland, Mike Dole, and then a fabulous album with the Asteroid Number 4, a band that were originally in Philadelphia. I think they're in California now. A really great bunch of guys. And we wrote and recorded an album called The Journey. And again, that's another one of my favorites. So and then I can't remember what you asked me, Mark.
About photography. I heard you do photography.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry,
that's right.
Yeah, so what I was going to say was, after recording all these albums, I now wait for people to approach me to collaborate, which is great. But as a creative person, you've got to be doing something every day. And so I turn to photography and design. I do a lot of graphic design as well. And all my designs and everything are for sale on a company called Redbubble. T-shirts, and posters, and books, and various odds and ends. I'm very interested in photography. I've always liked it, always enjoyed it, and it's something I can do on my own. Just go out on a quiet day and do it. So, and then I come back and I'm into Photoshop. So I like fiddling around, like all the post-processing work that you need to do.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, uploading it to a merchandise site, which, you know, there's quite a lot of posters of the band and stuff on there as well.
That's really cool. Regarding a music career, is there anything you regret doing or not doing?
The biggest regret of my life really is that I was never able to play the guitar. If I could have mastered the guitar, then I might, as soon as the band broke up, I might have continued myself, you know, create my own band to go out. But that's the biggest frustration. But, you know, in these later years, I mean, in 2011, I think it was, I was approached by Neil Martinson from California and said, would the band come and play in America? And I said, well, we can't. I said, poor Steve has gone, and Dan and Ed aren't particularly well, so I'm afraid I can't do it. So he left it for a few months, and he wrote to me again and said, well, you know, will you come out? And I said, no, I can't come out on my own. I can't play the guitar. I can't do it. I'm just a singer, you know, I can bang away at keyboards, but I'm really just a singer. And he said, well, I'll put a band together and you can come out. I said, no, I can't. I haven't performed for over 40 years. I can't do that. So I came in and my wife said, who was that on the phone? I said, well, this weird guy in America who wants me to go and perform. And she said, what did you say? I said, no. She said, well, you're an idiot. She said, because if you don't go, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And of course, she was absolutely right. And I thought about it. I thought, well, she is right. So amazingly, I suddenly found myself on a plane heading for California, and we did some gigs with some wonderful musicians out there, Cheryl, Rob, and Christoph. And yeah, it was great. We enjoyed it so much. When I came back here, I think we did another gig in Spain. And then I linked up with the manager, Chris Barnett, who's been fantastic for the band. And I joined up with the band here, based around the Scottish band, the Trembling Bells, another good band, wonderful musicians. And we performed together here and in Scandinavia and Europe, and had some great gigs together. And then I went back to America in 2013, I think it was. And we went across from California through to Texas and ended up at the Austin Psych Fest, which was a wonderful experience. So, yeah, it's some regrets, but some, you know, I haven't let it get me down, because there's always something new. You never know what's going to happen from day to day. And the fact that people are still interested in the band is really heartwarming. I know Dan and I were, you know, we lost Ed recently, but Dan and I are left, and we're very appreciative to how people like the work.
Yes, I mean, your music's wonderful. I mean, believe me, I mean, you deserve I mean, to me, in my heart, you're like you're like the Beatles. I mean, that's just how I feel personally. But
yeah, the trouble is I can't put that in the bank, Mark.
Oh, well, yeah, I hear you there. Unfortunately, yeah. Is there anything else you want to add for my audience to know? Anything in particular?
No, I think you've covered most of the ground there. What I would say is, to people who keep asking, we did release a 50th anniversary edition of Tangerine Dream. I don't know whether you saw that.
Oh, I think I saw something like that.
Yeah, on orange vinyl. And I know people love vinyl.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm deaf in one ear, so it's no good me, you know, commenting really on the clarity or the value of different types of music, whether it's digital or vinyl. I can't judge it because it all sounds the same to me in one ear. But I know people love vinyl. So with the band's manager, we are actually talking at the moment, I mean, literally, you know, over the last few days and months, about putting out a vinyl box set, which will include Tangerine Dream, Faintly Blowing, From Home to Home, White Faced Lady, possibly the Sidekicks album, the BBC album with all the stuff we recorded for the BBC. And then we have also got an album's worth of ultra rare demos that Ed and I made of songs that we were planning for the future. So if we found a company that would be prepared to put the money in, it could be a fantastic box set. It would also come with a book and posters, but there could, potentially be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 vinyl albums in it, which would be absolutely amazing. That would be the definitive work. After that, there probably wouldn't be any interest in the band, because that would be the absolute top of the list, a vinyl box set with everything in it.
Yeah, I hear you there. Excuse me. Well, that's all I have for this interview. However, one more thing, I'm going to put this on pause for a minute because I don't want to. Oh, yeah.
Okay, Mark. Thank you. Thanks for your interest in the band. I appreciate it. Really do.
Yes, sir. Good luck with your rest of your career, and I'll definitely keep an eye on more of your releases for sure.
Yeah. So let me know what you're doing with the podcast when it comes out, or whatever, and I'll advertise it on my sites as well.
Okay, I might put it on YouTube because I was doing that. I was going to do that originally with my podcast, is put it on YouTube.
Yeah, whatever you like.
Yeah,
whatever you like.
Okay. I just, I want to respect you too, because a lot of people don't like that stuff, and I just, out of respect, so I don't want to, like, well, I'm gonna do this. I don't care what they think, whatever, but I want to make sure I ask that.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Thank you, and thank you again. Definitely, I really enjoyed taking the time to interview with you. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from the '60s, honestly. From this new talk, it was really amazing. Honestly.
Yeah, well, it was a fabulous time, and I know a lot of people are interested in it. We're just very fortunate as a band that particular period still appeals to people, because that was the little window that we were recording in. We were very fortunate to be around at that time, even though we didn't have the success then.
Okay, yeah.
The success for us is very sweet now.
Yeah, I hear you. Definitely. Well, again, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Folks, Peter Daltrey.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers. Thank you.
See ya.